Okay, in an absolutely unprecedented thing, we actually know what we're going to be talking about tonight. We usually don't, but we can actually tell you before we start recording. It's obvious. This is Linux, so we're going to be talking about Android. Makes sense. Kind of. Much rather personally be talking about the public troll and the person that has really just been, I don't want to say nagging in PMs, but has been, I can't think, what's a word? Not trolling, but nagging like a troll with legitimate reasons, but in a very biased way.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Go towards the bottom of the document. The part like where I go.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
I thought that the lady killed at the end of the document.
Oh no, we're not getting into all of this shit. It's like this was all the shit that was in there before the Android. That's like, Android's more relevant for this week. But if you get towards like the very bottom of it, where it says someone with valid, question mark. This guy has had more things equally this long, equally quasi. My problem is it's not what I think it should be. My problem is it's what it is, not what I think it should be, or false assumptions or other things all of which need to be addressed. But I think Android has higher priority than dealing with something like that. It's like. So, anyways, first impressions on Android or Honeycomb.
Okay, well, if you want, I don't know if I told you this about the troll. You know the thing you said about uptimes?
Oh, we're gonna cover it. The troll's got. I have half a mind to make a whole other show for the troll.
I thought I'd say this because it's interesting. You want me to start off with it?
Go ahead, and then we'll get into Android because we can probably fill a whole show with Android.
Alright, yeah. So, he said, if you check the longest uptimes on the site, you'll see that Windows Server is dominating the results. Well, I went and checked the longest uptimes, and he's right. Windows Server is dominating the results with only 3 different results running something different. So, I'm like, this can't be possible, my whole identity is gone. But I checked on the FAQs, and it turns out that they don't actually track Linux servers at all for uptimes.
Why should they?
So, the reason that they don't is because Linux allows you to change some value based on whatever you want to change it to, and so they can't accurately track the uptimes. So, technically, what this guy is saying, that if you check the longest uptimes, you'll see that Windows Server is dominating the results. Yes. However, although it does not mean that these results aren't accurate, it seriously puts them in question by the fact that they don't have any results, that are actually running Linux because they don't track them at all.
Well, it's just like, how do you get official metrics for it? Well, the problem is like, here's the problem with all of these metrics, like uptime, market share metrics, is all of these metrics is they're based on a flawed premise that they're actually complete. I'll give you an example. You look at the market share metric. By some market share metrics, Windows still has 98%. I guarantee you nobody believes that. It's like Windows is 98% of all devices. I'm sorry. Bullshit. Apple has more than a 2% market share, and there's other companies. And then there's free distros, and then there's BSD, and then there's other things. That's a load of bullshit. It's like the fact that if you look at the metrics, blah percent of new systems sold in a year. Oh, by the way, all of these systems sold over here had that OS, but we're not counting it because of this technicality. So on and so on and so forth.
Yes, that's something, but I'm saying that this is a ridiculous amount that it doesn't actually, it's not included at all, It's like saying that everybody loves the color blue, however, we do not track people that choose the other colors.
Pretty much, yeah.
so it's a little bit above what you said as far as flawed statistics. So, I mean, so far, it doesn't guarantee that those statistics aren't accurate, but it puts them into serious question, and I'm sorry that I cannot take what you said as accurate.
Well, and that's why I said we do need to cover that at some point. But Android definitely has higher priority this week because I mean it's.
Yeah.
Now before we get into this, I should point out something. A lot of people have been asking if we're Google fanboys or something. You know, why do we turn a blind eye to Google? Bullshit. I've yelled at Google several times. The only fanboy over here as far as Googledom is Leo. And that's why he's not on the shows alone. So he can be checked when he goes off on his, I love Googledom. Because he really does. He has like that blind spot for Google. Okay. Keeping that in mind, audience, that we don't love Google. It's just, but they are a perfectly relevant player. What's your first thoughts on Honeycomb overall?
I think it's a great base, and it's definitely. I think that its structure. You know, it's a great. The revamp of the operating system is a great base for what's going to come in this tablet and future tablets, and there's a lot to improve on, but I do think that they really got the base pretty damn well, instead of just using a just normal phone base.
Yeah, I think they got the base well. There are some things. One thing I love about it is that I think they've done something that Apple overlooked. Now, it doesn't mean Apple won't be adding this in a few months, but one of the things I love about Honeycomb is it supports hardware acceleration, and it supports hardware acceleration keeping in mind that there's already hundreds of thousands of Android applications already. I forget what the exact number of it. I know it's over 200,000 at this point. I don't know the exact number. It's not as many as Apple, but there are thousands of Android applications. And they said this in the announcement, the way they put the hardware acceleration into Honeycomb, version 3 of Android, designed specifically of tablets, is literally add one line of code as an update to your already existing Android tablet your already existing Android app in no way, shape, or form optimized for Honeycomb or the tablet form factor, but add a single line of code and it will now use hardware acceleration to make it better.
Yes.
That, brilliant. Because that means every freaking application that has any work being done on it in Android is now, or will within a few months, be hardware accelerated.
That follows their design standards. And this is, you can't, if you're using your own libraries to interact with Android and you're building your own API instead of using theirs, then it might not work. But if you're using their design standards, which aren't restricting, they're just, they just make so your application is consistent and works better.
Yeah, it's basically the idea of, okay, can we agree that 1 equals 1? I know 1 can equal 2, but can it equal 1 today? It's like,
I know you could do it this way, but can we just do it this way just for the sake of consistency? It's not a restricting standard, but but yes, not all applications. If I was to write an application without knowing anything about Android, I might get something to work, but it might not work on hardware acceleration because I'm not writing it how it should be written.
Okay, taking that in mind, I would still argue at least 75% of the current existing Android applications are hardware acceleration ready. And that it's like basically there'll be an update. The developers goes, oh, you mean there's this new line of code? Sure, added update.
I think they put a lot of work into making sure that it works with all of those. So yes, I would think so.
Yeah. I had to laugh for a little bit, when they started saying, oh, we care about the team in Building 44. I felt like it should have been 42. The geek in me was like, why aren't they in Building 42? It's 42 more.
Building 42. That makes me curious.
It's like, well, okay, now I want to know what's in Building 42 at Google. It's like,
check.
Is it like their server room or something? Is that why the Android team isn't in there?
Well, Building 42 is the office place of Eric Schmidt.
Ah! Okay.
And it's the Google corporate headquarters. So I think they did a pretty good one.
Okay, there's a better thing for 42. Well, of course, it's not Schmidt's office anymore.
Yes, but it is their corporate headquarters, so yeah.
Okay, well, okay.
So I'm okay with them using 42 for that, for like the most important.
I don't know if I am. I don't know if I want Google to be that particular answer. I mean, do you really want Google to be that particular answer? Just saying, you know. It's like, I don't know if it was just me. And you're more an Ubuntu Mint Unity person. I'm not a Gnomish person. I'm not a Sant. But is it just me, or did the general UI of Honeycomb look a little Unity-ish? And it's
well, I mean, yeah, and you know, that could be something or could be nothing. It is a fact that Canonical did help Google greatly in building Chrome OS, and I'm sure that they worked together on other things. So it's very possible that it was inspired and possibly directly helped.
Well, and I'm not complaining about that. I mean, Unity is an open source project. They could have taken the code directly as long as they put it into the Android thing and still left it open source. So that's and actually that would be a good thing, because then it would make it easy for Linux developers to begin porting natively to Android, because Android is a Linux distro, and that's something Android doesn't really take advantage of. I like the fact that these things all of us on Linux side love are getting used with very little alteration, or in a way that's very familiar to us Linux users, in a way that's very straightforward to the consumer, because then, you know, if they ever get to play around with a Linux desktop, they're like, oh, I've already screwed with all of this stuff on my thing I bought. You know, it's not, oh dear God, foreign to them. I don't have anything wrong with that. It's just, there's one of those, this looks so much like Unity. And then I thought, why is Unity on the desktop? Because it just works in this form factor. I've always had do we really need this in the desktop with Unity? That's... So.
I'm actually, I know that you're not as much, but I'm excited about Unity. I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I mean, the distro that I'm using, Mint, has publicly stated that they are not switching to Unity. But I am excited to try it out, see what it's like, and I may hate it, but I'm interested.
Well, it's on that. It's really going to matter on a few things. How it's implemented and how customizable it is, because one of the things being thrown around with Unity and later revisions of GNOME is taking some of the customizability out to try and standardize it. And why I get the logic, when you start standardizing, you start making one way only, our way, and if it doesn't make sense to you, screw you. And that's very much not what Linux or open desktop environments are about in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Now, you know, moving on to, it's like we got past the initial side, the Unity side. Is it just me, or when I was seeing those widgets they were showing off, you know, about for dealing with things like videos published on and everything else, I'm like, this is basically, to me, watching that, it felt like when Microsoft was showing up all these tiles, you know, interactive tiles that are live updating. That's what these widgets are. They're like the Phone 7 live updating tiles, but in a way that is a little bit more intuitive, in my opinion. I'm not saying they stole it.
I think that the widgets are more like your Android widgets that were there before the Windows 7 tiles anyway.
I know, again, what I'm referring to as the Windows 7-ish feature is the way in which they update, and that's very reminiscent of Phone 7. Yes, the widgets were there before. They've basically just been upgraded.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking out of sight, because I know all the Phone 7 fanboys are going to be going, well, they stole that from Microsoft. And you're pointing out they had it before, they've just upgraded it to include this functionality. But it could be a valid thing. However, based on having to screw around with Phone 7 phones, because I did do that over the holidays, and what I saw in that demo, I like the Android version better. I'm not worried about it like taking over and screwing up and having complications with moving it, because I still have the multiple desktops and everything else. It seems like it's a more elegant approach to it, personally, for me.
ideas and takes ideas from every other operating system. And that's good. You know, the iPhone 4 and would not have folders and all the other things that it has if it wasn't for Android. And Android wouldn't have a lot of the things if it wasn't for, you know.
And I guarantee you, if the thing wasn't getting so jumbled up, if Google was the only one doing a tablet, Honeycomb would not be the product it is. The one thing you and I both agree on, regardless, competition's good. It makes everybody keep one-upping each other, and we win. We, the consumer, win. I like competition. It's, you know, but I mean, a lot of this is like stuff Linux users find right at home. If you're using if you use KDE, if you like KDE, the little notifications thing that KDE by default in the lower right hand corner, that is exactly what the notifications is looking like it's going to be for Honeycomb. It's very in that form. You know, these are all the tasks going on. These are the things. I felt like I was on a tablet optimized Linux box rather than Android, which is what Android is. But it really, based on the demo they were showing, I'm like, this feels...
I hear a lot of people, when they're describing Android, say it's Linux-based, and I generally correct them that it's not Linux-based. You know, it's in the same way that something could be it is Linux.
It is Linux. Well, the reason I say Linux-based for Android as opposed to Linux is because of that Java emulation environment that's designed to run the applications. For the vast majority of Android applications, they're not running native. They're running in that Java emulation environment.
No, that's true. You know, it's Linux with stuff on top of it. It's Linux customized, but it's not like Google took the code and they're actually changing the internal OS. The internal OS is the same OS that's running on my computer. It's just the stuff that they took away from it, which is most of the GNU utilities, and put on top of it, which is most of the, you know, Dalvik utilities, that makes it Android. It's not that they changed the internal OS, which is, you know, I think it's important to note that this is using...
Oh, no, it is Linux. It really is. The only reason I make the distinction to say Linux-based is for what I was talking about, in that Linux, like desktop Linux, like the distros we're using, don't run the Dalvik. Now, there's no reason they couldn't. I mean, because it's open source. You could download it, put it on, and emulate it in. As a matter of fact, if certain companies don't get it through their head that I want a Linux app, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start emulating Android on my Linux box so I can get the services that they're giving Android and not giving to my desktop, damn it! Because it's a way to get them. But... yeah, it's a subtle distinction, but I mean, it's really, if you like Linux, and especially I think if you like KDE, it's very clear from the demo they gave, the UI they're going for, at least the stock UI for Android, is very widget-based. It's very grab stuff and drag it around and so on. It very much like the logic behind KDE. I love that logic. I've got in more than one heated debate with several people on YouTube here that goes, that logic sucks. I hate widgets. That logic sucks. However, I would think many of the people, but I know you have something to say, but I would think many of the people who hate that logic on the desktop are going to love it in the tablet form factor because you're doing everything with your fingertip.
Mm-hmm. I looked at that and you pointed it out greatly. You just made me realize that the way you drag out things, you know, from the bottom when you open up this little bar and drag them onto the screen to create a widget is the exact same way that KDE does it.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that.
No, it's like, I'm going to love this because I love KDE. People who hate KDE and hate widgets may or may not like it. Just depends. I think it's the perfect solution, especially for this form factor. Because that is how you're doing everything on a tablet. You're sticking your finger in there and going, do this. And that drag and drop widget mentality works perfectly for that. Mm-hmm. And I like that they went with that. Again, so I know some people hate that though. So it's